Next is my closest friend from high school and I have been watching the podcast for about a year now, and we absolutely love it. Nice. She and I were hoping to start a podcast of our own. Our aim is not to be the next Joe Rogan or call her daddy, but a little like this podcast, which is to have a smaller, more intimate platform to air our conversations. The biggest roadblock is simply we know jack shit about the technicalities of starting a podcast. We have Google Docs and spreadsheets galore of episode ideas and breakdowns, but as for filming, editing, and tech logistics, consider us podcast virgins. This is my needlessly long-winded way of asking if you have any advice for us in terms of organization / how you got started / any major do's and don'ts when it comes to starting a podcast. Thanks so much.
So we had a budget, and so we typed in Joe Rogan podcast and bought. You've seen these mics on every podcast. That page has probably sold thousands of phones.
For sure.
But you don't need to do that. Like if we have these cameras are what? Like how much money?
I don't know, man. I don't remember.
$700.
What do they call it? What's the type of camera? Well, we can just read off what we have. We have Shure microphones, I think they're called. SHURE.
Canon
Vixia HF G50s.
There you go.
You don't need those. You don't need those at all. What I would recommend doing is using your phone, get a Gorilla Pod, which is just a little phone stand that'll hold your phone or any kind of thing. You could probably rig it up using headphones of some sort that have a microphone on it. You probably have all of the equipment you need if you have Apple equipment to shoot your first podcast. I wouldn't live stream it because that's a level of tech that becomes very complicated. But set up a camera, set up 2 microphones. At the beginning of it, this is literally what we do. We do a clap because that in the waveform of the audio makes this big spike. And the waveform, if you look at it, and so what happens is we actually have, like, you'll be recording your audio into a phone or something, and this will be recording video over here. And then so what you do is you
have to sync your audio and your video.
Exactly. So you get, what program do you use, Justin, to sync?
I just do it manually in Adobe Premiere, but you could use
iMovie. You could use iMovie. Easily you could use iMovie, which is on board. And then you're just going to look for that big spike, and you grab the audio from this microphone, the audio from that microphone, drag them to the same spot as the video, and now I'm speaking at close to the same thing. And every now and then we get it off by 1/10 of a second, and it looks really ridiculous. But that's all that I would do to start. You don't need our setup. You don't even need good lights. The act of executing on it is going to teach you so much more than prepping. So my number one piece of advice to you is commit to shooting before the week is out, even if it sucks, and you don't have to post it. You just have to go through the act of shooting it, and you're going to learn so much.
Question: would you recommend that a high school person start a podcast?
I would recommend that you pursue your passion, and probably you won't stick with it, and that's totally fine. But the skills, this is the thing. I predict that you don't stick with it, that it becomes a headache, that you don't want to do it, and that's great. But you will learn how to sync audio. You know what I mean? You'll learn oh shit, that lighting is horrible. You'll learn a little bit about backgrounds after your 10th thing when you're like, man, that the backlight doesn't work. So all of this stuff does not need to be known up front. What you need to do up front is commit to trying to get it filmed. And I think that the skills that you will learn from that will be manifold. You'll catch how many times you say and you'll start working on that, and you'll develop a lot of skills that'll probably outlive this first podcast, is my guess.
Interesting.
Would you not?
I feel like the podcast space is really crowded.
I guess we're viewing it differently. I'm not saying that they're necessarily, like they said, going to be super successful, but if you're going to learn a lot from the process. And they said they wanted a small audience, right? Which is...
Yeah, you're just also going on record with ideas that you may not like that will be there forever in a society that is more than willing to go back in time and cancel you for things that you say publicly.
So would your net advice be not to do it?
I don't know, man. But if a friend of mine was like, I want to be it depends. I guess do you have some passion for talk shows, or do you want to be an entrepreneur? If someone read the 4 Hour Workweek and was like, hey, I want to start a business and I want it to be a podcast, I would say that I would not do this. I think your chance of success is low. I think your downside is high. Mm-hmm. This could get you some negative stuff coming your way in your life. And I actually don't know that there's much chance of it even being able to support a modest lifestyle relative to starting a different business where you get the same ability to learn skills even if it fails. Like, that's not unique to podcasts. So it would depend. But if my sister had a high school aged child and that child was interested in entrepreneurship, I would dissuade them from making a podcast.
I totally agree. If you come to me and you say, I want to start a business that earns money, and you're like, my idea is a podcast, I'll be like, try again.
Or even a lifestyle business. I want to do something I enjoy that makes $3,000 a month so I can go live on the beach in Brazil. I go, cool, don't do a podcast.
Yeah, but if you're like, no, I really want to do a podcast, I'd be like, do a podcast. Then in that case.
Sure.
Also, you're so young, you're going to like.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think I realized when I was 17 how much my opinions would change and how certain I was at the time and how differently I feel today.
Yeah.
And so just being on record with that every step of the way, I think
might have been a detriment.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm coming to that thought, which is you almost want to shield kids from some of the consequences of their behavior. And in this new world that we live in, you almost want to do yourself the favor of not going on record with anything until you're 25, at least.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You're 16.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean, when I was 16, I would have said.
I mean, but every 16-year-old is on record having said everything at this point. They're all on TikTok. They've all recorded themselves. So do you really
but I'm not saying that I think you'd go back and find that someone was saying a slur against gay people. I'm saying this person might be super capitalist or super socialist or whatever, and they might just talk about their beliefs and then come to have different beliefs and then run for office and not be able to be a senator or whatever it might be, or not be able to get a job at a movie theater because they had a certain, I'm
more optimistic about the future than that. I understand what you're saying.
We today, at least, do not express empathy to people who have gone on record. We treat them like a unique subclass of people.
Yeah.
And we say, we've all said this privately, but the fact that they said this publicly makes them a monster.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we don't even have the empathy to remember, when I was 16, I did that exact same thing. We just look at ourselves at 40 and go, I would never do that now. That's a bad 16-year-old. That's a bad human. It's like, dude, you were doing this exact same shit 24 years ago. And so that's the reason. It's not that I think it would be a waste of time or that I think it wouldn't make money. But I think you're just going to open yourself up to risk. And by the way, that might sound like something you don't care about at all at 16.
Well, so we did this though. We opened ourselves up. We had Michelle made a video that was just like trashed us based on things that I'd written in the past, much of which was taken out of context. It was worth it in my mind. You know what I mean? Like it was worth it for us. And so it feels weird for me to say, don't do it.
I'm not saying don't do it. I would recommend most entrepreneurs do something that's not based on their personality. I would recommend most people do something that doesn't require your face. Tony Robbins has to go up on stage and speak for 12 hours straight because it's the Tony Robbins show when he goes to unleash the power within. It's just not the business model I'd recommend for people. Joe Rogan's got a good gig. He just shows up and talks to people. Like, there are enviable podcast lives, but just in general, for entrepreneurs, I'd mostly say, if you can find something you enjoy doing, but that doesn't have to be based on your personality, that'll let you take a month off.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
So the difference, I guess we might have different advice. Because you're so young and because you're interested, I would encourage you to do it. And I'm not worried that you're going to stick with it. If you do, God bless you. But you're probably going to try so many different things. But the fact that this is what is intriguing to you, and you've got, like, one of the things that I talk about in How to Find Your Passion is, where do you have this backlog of work? You have all these Google Docs of things. Fantastic. Like, that to me is a good sign. And the risks that Ben talks about, which are real, to me are worth the upside of starting this process, which may take you to eventually just being a faceless entrepreneur who isn't running a personality business.
Yeah, I guess it also depends what you want to do, like what you want to be in life. If you want to be a famous actor or a politician, I would say definitely don't do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if you're going to be in business, you can afford to go on record for a bunch of stuff, get canceled 10 years later, and then make a faceless business. I don't know. Just be aware that you might not believe the stuff that you say. Yeah. I might not believe the stuff that I say in 10 years.
Tomorrow, probably. But
I'm glad I didn't start a podcast at 16.
Really? Yeah, I'm ambivalent to the fact. Honestly, if we'd started a podcast at 16, Lord knows we might be the most famous podcasters in the world right now. Right? That was 15 years ago. We'd been the first ever podcast. That was Art of Charm, right? And granted,
I don't think the first ever podcast is the most popular. I mean, Joe's not famous because he's the first podcast ever.
Art of Charm was one of the earliest, and I don't think that what they were doing was mind bending. And it since has fallen off. Jordan has left and all that kind of stuff. But they had a business for a long time. But it all worked out for us. That's the other thing. Is like, hey, you like your life now, and you don't want to go change the past. That makes a ton of sense. So yeah, different advice. Ben would say be more cautious. I would say you're gonna be okay. Let it rip. But
You'll be okay no matter what. Death is not to be feared.
Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.